What is up, IDP Army? What is up, fantasy football fanatics? Man, Jordan Reigns at 50 Shades of Drunk. You probably already know that, but if you don't know that, get to know that. Follow me on Twitter. And before you do anything, make sure you smash subscribe, follow us, give us a thumbs up. Go subscribe to both of our podcast feeds. We have 4 different podcasts covering IDP, best ball, NFL, fantasy football, Dynasty, the whole bit, the whole shebang. But you guys know what I do. This is my man Chuck Bass over here. How you doing, Chuck? I thought we'd have a little fun post NFL draft. Bring somebody on who just loves talking about football. You guys make sure you follow him on Twitter. But Chuck, tell us a little about you and what's goody.
I am Chuck Bass, and I am coming down from an insane NFL draft high. Wow, what a build-up. And, man, we're just like – I'm in the super come-down phase right now. I am the host of the This Guy Sucks podcast. But today, man, I'm here to just set you up for some spikes. We're going to drop some absolute nuggets. I'm excited.
Bang, bang, bang. I love to hear that. Love getting set up for a huge victory. Appreciate you coming on, my guy. We were talking a little bit before we kind of started just how we were going to run this show, what we're going to do. And we really, we're kind of going to, talking about the come down. We're going to, Grateful Dead this mofo and just kind of see where things go. So we had a crazy NFL draft. I already talked through some of this with Billy yesterday. We've already got tons of news coming in on both sides of the ball. Today is the day that teams have to let players know if they're going to exercise their 5th-year option. So we've got some news that'll be trickling in throughout the rest of the day. We'll touch on some of those. But, if you guys are, again, share this in your fantasy football leagues. Join the Discord. A lot of good links in the descriptions. But let's just go ahead and lead it off with kind of the top-end news. Again, some of those 5th-year options coming through. For IDP fantasy football, we'll just kind of start with the Ravens. We started there. I'm really looking for this Patrick Queen news to come through. They took Trenton Simpson, I believe, 3rd or 4th round. And a lot of people kind of saw that as a signal that they're wanting to move on from Patrick Queen. Do you have what's your team? I'm a Steelers fan and a Chiefs fan and a Bills fan. I tweeted something out earlier. I think the Ravens are in a piss poor spot right now across the board. I think people way overestimate what Lamar Jackson really does for a whole team. I think at this point they're probably the worst overall roster in the division, and I think they have the 3rd best quarterback. So but what do you think about the Baltimore Ravens? Patrick Queen, any thoughts?
Those are some incredibly hot takes, but they're hot and they're grounded in reality. The Patrick Queen situation, I think for them it's going to be they'll be okay if they decide not to pick up his option. But I do think that he provides. When I was looking into the numbers of the defense, I do think he provides a little bit more than I was expecting. Despite their incredible collapse last year after losing Lamar. They were actually 7th in overall defensive DVOA, 5th in weighted, and I didn't realize this, but I guess it makes sense playing in the division. They had the 3rd hardest schedule last year. But a lot of that stuff just gets completely masked by how fragile they were with the Lamar Jackson run offense. Does that change this year, bringing Todd Monken in? I'm not sure. Pundits on both sides of the aisle have kind of been clamoring to see what the Ravens would look like with a pass-oriented Lamar attack. Is this the guy for it? I'm not sure, but I do know that the last time he was an NFL offensive coordinator in 2018 for my Bucks, they were 4th in overall yards and 1st in passing yards. So, it's possible. He did it with Fitzpatrick and Jameis. Can he do it with Lamar? You tell me.
I don't think he can. I keep telling people I'm off of Lamar. He's a great quarterback. He can win you games. That's great. Yeah. But from a fantasy perspective and just from a reality perspective, his weapons are meh at best, aside from Mark Andrews. And he's never even thrown for over 3,500 yards. And I just this is the NFL in 2023. Okay. 3,500 yards. There are guys that'll have 3,500 yards by week 7 this next season. You know what I mean? Potentially. That's like it. So at some point you just have to be able to keep up. I don't know if he can. And the weapons around him they don't bring me any.
No, they don't.
Joy or they don't do much for me. OBJ does nothing for me. He's a vibes guy. Bring him in, make Lamar happy. Hollywood was pretty decent.
But he's
gone.
Yep.
You know, why did he leave too? Like, that's another, like, what happened there? Like, why would a guy like that want to leave? There are things not being said here. We know Rashad Bateman's not happy.
Yeah.
He had a little smile on his face the last few months, but there was a time when them Twitter fingers was going crazy. All right, he's not happy. Okay.
Yeah, no,
am I supposed to be excited about Prochet?
No,
I mean, Lamar isn't set up to succeed at all. You know, the Ravens are the Ravens and Lamar's Lamar, but I think that's over stimulating what the Ravens can actually do. Flip that around though, back to Patrick Queen. I think defensively, Roquan Smith did enough for them to honestly feel like dealing Patrick Queen is going to get them something good. So I don't want to completely bury the Ravens yet. That's where I'm at today. I want to see what happens with Queen, because I think that they don't need Queen now that Roquan's there and he's gotten paid. Yeah. They can survive with mid-range linebacker play from Patrick Queen and then Malik Harris in the last 2 years. Now with Roquan and anybody else, it's going to be better. So it makes sense they would want to move on from Patrick Queen. And there are plenty of teams that need a guy like Patrick Queen. He may stay in the division. I mean, Steelers need a running linebacker. I won't lie to you. He played with Joe Burrow. You know, I don't know how that would work out necessarily, but this is a new era of the NFL as well. We're seeing a lot of teams do a lot more trades, but back in the day, you know, things like that were, you know, kind of, we don't mess with those guys or whatever. But this is an NFL that's run by the Plus EV, you know, spreadsheet boys in Ohio. So what are you going to do? So maybe Patrick Queen ends up on the Bengals. We'll see. That's a pretty big story.
He definitely has.
You said you're a Buck fan, though. You guys have some linebacker issues. What's up with your dude down there?
We do. The Bucks linebackers, you know, if you had asked me this question 2 years ago, especially during our Super Bowl run, you could make the argument that they were the core of our team. And I mean on both sides of the ball, between White and David, and honestly, even Jason Pierre-Paul rotating in different ways. Shaq Barrett. I mean, we've completely fallen off the cliff. But if you're White, you know, I'm thinking he's overvaluing his contributions to the team. He struggled mightily the last 2 years, despite having the high ceiling that he does as a player. He's streaky. He has streaky games where he flies high, but he kind of goes as the team goes. And if they want to move on from him, I'll be extremely disappointed. But as a team who's sneaking their way into a rebuild without saying that they're in a rebuild, I wouldn't mind trading him for some very nice capital.
Yeah. Speaking of the Bucks, you know, we want to just say, you know, Shaq Barrett, tragedy happened to his family yesterday.
Prayers up.
Absolutely terrible. I wouldn't be shocked, and I wouldn't say a word, and I would hope nobody would if he never plays another snap of football again. If he just, you know, this is a big deal. I don't know how many people that listen to this have kids or anything like that, but as a father myself, like, I can just tell you, his whole world is completely different today than he ever thought it would be. So, you know, thoughts and prayers going to that family, especially from the IDP side of things. Shaq Barrett's helped a lot of people win some championships for IDP. He helped the Bucks win a big trophy down there. That wasn't no little thing that he did for Tampa Bay. So, we just want to let the family and the organization know what we're thinking about him today. So.
Absolutely. Amazing player, getting a lot of support and love. He means a lot to the community. They're trying everything they can to take care of him. So happy to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely tragic. I'm looking at the dead cap here that we would hit, though, if Patrick Queen were to stick around. I mean, they get rid of him, and they're going to save $12 million. I just don't see a world where they don't get rid of him somehow today. So,
well, here's my question to you, and you kind of not tiptoed. You mentioned this earlier. You don't think the Ravens really are any worse off without him than they might be with him, even if he could still be a benefit to another team with his transferable skill set?
I don't think because again, the Ravens have been fine at linebacker with Patrick Queen and Malik Harris. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Patrick Queen is exponentially less good. I said that backwards. Than Roquan Smith. You know what I mean? So, and if Trenton Simpson is better than Malik Harris theoretically, it's a much better linebacking core even without Patrick Queen. You know, we don't even know that Patrick Queen is as good as the guy they just drafted, Trenton. We don't know that. So it makes sense to free up some of that money. And again, I don't believe that this is the Ravens team that's going to roll out. I just can't believe that looking at it. Like, even with OBJ, and they drafted who they drafted.
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers. Yeah. Even with Zay Flowers, I think that they're going to bring something else is going to happen here, and it's going to have to, honestly. I don't know who or what that's going to be. Maybe Deontay Johnson. I don't know.
There needs to be some moves. I mean, the concern if you're a Ravens fan is that as the offense potentially rounds into more form, if it does, that's a huge if, that the defense slides, and you're looking at, you haven't made any more progress overall as a team than you had last year. And that's, that's going to be a big issue for them going into the rest of the offseason is, have they turned a corner, and is everybody all smiles and they're going to go in and they're going to compete and try to win the division? And, like you said, there's potential that this is the third worst quarterback in the division. That doesn't mean that he sucks. That just means that they play in arguably the hardest division in football.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Kenny Pickett's not that good. I'll be real. I'm a realist. I mean, he's okay.
He's a youngin'.
But again, the crazy part is Kenny Pickett sucks. Okay, let's just be real. Kenny Pickett sucks. I know Kenny Pickett's going to throw 3,500 fucking yards this year. You know what I mean? I don't care how many yards Lamar Jackson runs. I know Kenny Pickett can at least bang when it comes down to it with his arm in a game.
Sure. So I'll ask you this. Let me put a hypothetical there. If Lamar Jackson had A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, do you think he's putting up Jalen Hurts numbers?
I mean, yeah, but the thing is, Jalen Hurts didn't put up crazy numbers. What did he get, like 3,800 yards?
3,700, 37 yards. 37.
Yeah. That's not that crazy.
They're blowing teams out, though.
That's not crazy. But Lamar hasn't even hit 3,500 yards, and he's been in the league for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
He has an MVP. Jalen Hurts just got some new toys, barely got a starting job. You know what I'm saying?
So does your tune change if they acquire DeAndre Hopkins?
No.
Not at all. Wow.
I don't like DeAndre Hopkins. I think that nobody. I mean, look at what's happening. I just said this on the show the other day. The only people that want DeAndre Hopkins right now are Bill's Twitter. Love Bill's Twitter, but Bill's Twitter is thirsty.
Who doesn't Bill's Twitter want?
Even mildly available, mildly good player. They are so thirsty.
I get it. I get it. Yeah,
Who the other people that want DeAndre Hopkins? The Arizona Cardinals. When you think of an organization that has the worst discernment ability when it comes to bringing players into their organization to be useful over the last 5 years, Arizona Cardinals.
Struggle bus.
Their judgment sucks. So those two people are the two most thirsty. Okay, who else's names run out there? The Baltimore Ravens. Talk about a legacy of wide receivers. Rashad Perryman. I just nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like, the people that want him are not the people that show indication of being good at what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, basically everybody who has a wide receiver too that isn't somebody you would consider a top 20 wide receiver, most of those fan bases think that he's just the automatic plug and play, and he might be, but it just depends on your quarterback and what you're capable of doing. I mean, he's
if they would have brought him on instead of Arizona 3 or 4 years ago, yes, you know what I mean? And I think that if Lamar ended up with a guy that was like that in his prime right now, somebody that, like, if they gave him Deebo Samuel, like somebody that like could ignite a little bit of a spark, you know what I mean? Somebody like that where I'm like, okay, I've seen this guy do it a little bit. I know that he can do a little bit on his own. Even Hollywood. I think we would have seen the best of Hollywood if he would have stayed there. You know what I mean? Like,
Hollywood's time in
player. I'm tired of getting guys on the way down or trying to catch a guy from the bottom and help him get up with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's what they're trying with Zay Flowers, but like you're saying, that's not a definite. Like, that could not work out. They need somebody who we know will work out that you don't have to worry about. They think that OBJ is that move, and I mean, a lot of us are sitting here. And a lot of us are sitting here still wondering if this offense is actually any better than it was last year. I'll be curious to see how much they use like Isaiah Likely this year, because they're bringing Todd Monken in, who ran a lot of great tight end sets in Georgia. So maybe they double down on their strongest position on offense. Who knows? And also he could just be a flash in the pan.
I just think that I hope that Lamar moves forward in his passing game, not in efficiency. I know everyone loves it. I want him to do some volume. You know what I mean? I want him to be in some of these big games.
He does too, by the way. He wants that also. I think that he wants that too. So we'll see.
I mean, Baltimore Ravens, y'all need to get your coaches and all your people, put them in that position. You know what I mean? Like, put him in that spot. All right, we've talked a lot about Baltimore. Let's talk about another kind of a team that has a lot of fans. We brought them up already. Let's talk about the Bills. They just signed Latavius Murray, okay? Number one, big shout out Latavius Murray. Okay,
so
this
strong.
guy has been around. We've been around for a minute. Let's give Latavius Murray his due. He's outlasted Todd Gurley. He's outlasted Melvin Gordon. He's outlasted basically everybody that came in the league with him.
Yeah.
He's still going.
Well, Le'Veon Bell, all of them.
He just didn't up on the Bills, guys. Like, this dude's like, man, I might just post up and get me a ring. You know what I'm saying? So big ups to him. But how do you feel about him signing there with the combination of, Damian Harris? That's pretty much their only running back right now. They moved Singletary to Houston.
Yeah, they've still got James Cook. So what they're trying to do is, it's what a lot of these, upper echelon teams try to do is, instead of having one running back that can do it all, they have three guys that can do a little bit of everything, which saves them. It's almost like hedging in case one of them gets hurt. They still have the skill sets the others provide. But the top teams just don't really value, the do-it-all running back like we do as fantasy players, or like a lot of the other players in the league do. You look at the Chiefs, you look at the Bills, you look at the Bengals. A lot of these teams are providing these like committee-esque approaches. And I like Murray, but I'm not sure if he's a huge guy. He's almost 6'4". It's one of the biggest running backs that's ever played.
He's like probably the closest thing to Derrick Henry in the league. That's not Derrick Henry.
Yeah. No, honestly, that's what he's been for years, and that's why he keeps finding his way onto teams, and that's why he keeps vulturing points from my guys.
Well, I just looked at they put his stat line here. I didn't realize this. 160 carries last year. He's 33 right now. He's 32. 160 carries at 32 is pretty meaningful, but 703 yards. That's a lot of yards. That's good. And that was on the Broncos. They weren't even, I really think that we might have some sneaky upside here, on this team that is trying to find their running identity. I think that we can say that and have been for a while. Latavius Murray could be that guy at the goal line. So, if you want to put somebody in and don't make Josh Allen run it in,
that's what they need.
Guy right here.
Yeah, a move like that indicates to me that they really are trying to be more careful with Josh, who really wasn't the same after that UCL injury last year. And you bring in, who do you pick your poison? Do you want Josh Allen running you over at the goal line, or do you want Latavius Murray running you over at the goal line? They're huge, they're big guys. So if I'm the Bills, you're just trying to. They didn't really fix big areas of need, in my opinion, in the draft. But they were at the 2 seed. They really don't have that much more to go. They just have to play better.
Well, and that's the thing. The Bills the last few years, pay attention. I'm sure you have too. Like they haven't changed a lot in the last 3 years. They've made small tweaks. Move this guy. Moved on from Cole Beasley. Brought John Brown back. Moved on from Isaiah McKenzie. They brought Shaq Lawson back. They're moving. They kept Jordan Poyer. They still got Hyde. They brought in Hamlin. So these are small moves. They're still rocking Tre'Davious White out here. They're still Teron Johnson. These are the same Bills that we saw play in the playoffs essentially in 2019, 2020, whenever that first real kind of big year was for them. So they've been good. And that's the thing. Like you said, they've stayed very good. They're making small tweaks. I would be curious on how. I bet Latavius Murray is an elite pass blocker if I had to look too. Just knowing how big he is, he's probably going to open up a lot of options. I know he's got pretty soft hands. He wasn't always used like that, but I had him. What year was that? 2016, I think, the year that Derek Carr broke his leg. I remember I had Latavius Murray on a team that year, and he was a lot of fun. I just remember having a lot of fun with Latavius Murray. So getting him on the Bills, I think, is going to be fun. For fantasy purposes, it's obviously going to be three different guys. I think they're all three just going to be in that flex range, honestly. And if you got one, you probably don't want to rely on them, but you'll probably rather have a Bills running back than not have a Bills running back. Because if one of them gets sick, gets traded or gets moved or is inactive, you're looking at a little bit of some sneaky upside. We're back where we started. So.
He has. I'm just looking right now, and this will confirm what you just said. He has one of the highest pass blocking grades of any running back, average wise, over the last 4 or 5 seasons. So that for a team that doesn't really pass the ball to its running backs that much, they're doubling down on their core philosophy, just like the Chiefs, just like the Bengals, these teams that didn't make any big splash moves throughout the draft. They're just running it back because they all know that they're there. They all know that they're a few drives away from playing in the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yep. I love it. I mean, you see a lot of that too with the Seahawks. I mean, these teams are just like, yeah, we're not going to do a whole big overhaul. And then they saw kind of what happens when you do that. You put yourself in a weird position later on down the road, a la the Rams. You churn in a lot of guys, you make a lot of things happen all at once, but that's not like a consistent group of people that are really going to be there for a while.
No, absolutely.
All right, well, still in this sort of area, or just another talking point. Joe Mixon, Bengals coach, says is here with the team.
Maybe he's just stating a fact because, gosh, I hope that they have plans. I hope that they have some plans.
The next quote is even better. I like Joe Mixon, Taylor added.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thanks, Taylor. It's good to get your insight on the situation.
Oh, boy. I don't know how I'm going to stretch those two quotes into 1,800 words, but I'll figure it out.
Let's zoom in on this excellent analysis he's giving us right now.
Joe Mixon is here with the team, and I like him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Hey! All right. Thanks, Zach Taylor. We appreciate it. I don't really know what's going to be going on with him. I mean, he's one of these rare guys that's kind of been with the same team for a while now. I mean, the second contract running back. They've never given up on him. He's had these moments where he's looked like the best running back in the entire NFL. And then he's had these moments where he looks like he spends too much time hanging out in Las Vegas with Alvin Kamara. We just don't really know what Joe Mixon we're going to get. But we do know that he's generally on the Bengals. So what are your thoughts on this? I know they drafted a guy late. Who did they get? Was it Chase Brown?
Yeah, Chase Brown, and who actually currently, I mean, I know it's early, but who already sits and projects to be number 2 on the depth chart. I'm surprised by this, honestly. I didn't think that Joe Mixon's career was over by any stretch of the means, but he faded pretty quickly. I mean, he was overtaken by P. Ryan from almost every important metric that you can use to measure a running back, including what's probably the most important for a team in the playoffs, is pass blocking grade. I mean, Joe Mixon had one of the worst pass blocking grades in the league last year. That's not, the end all be all, but, he had less RB1 finishes. No, I apologize. He had less top 10 RB finishes than Samaje Perine did last year. And he started all but, I think like 3 or 4 games. So, I mean, he just, I don't know. Does the team know something we don't? I know that their outside zone rushing attack is it's the core of their offense. It sets up all their, one-on-one passing plays, pushing the ball down the field. I don't know. I'm completely confused by the idea to not address this whatsoever.
Yeah, they seem to be, just kind of just running, kind of like the Chiefs do with running back, where it's just like, we're not looking necessarily for a prolific, or to run a guy into the dirt. Mixon, while he maybe could be that guy, they lost a Super Bowl because they put P. Ryan out there, and P. Ryan's still on the team. He gets run. So I think they really do like the committee approach. And I think my kind of takeaway is when Zach Wilson says something, kind of boring, like I like Joe Mixon. Yeah. I think that's kind of the kind of person Zach Taylor is, the coach he is. Like he does say these things about all of his guys, and then he keeps them around. Yeah. Like
very matter of fact. Yeah.
So maybe we should, I opened up with a big laugh there, but maybe we should take that as like, Zach Taylor is doing what he can for his guys. He is here. And, maybe the subtext is as long as I'm around and, things are not going completely south, Joe Mixon is our guy. Maybe that's the subtext of what we're hearing here. So
you're right. And there's a good chance that, they're looking at that and they're going, while the run is important, our team is Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. And then everyone after that, plug and play. It doesn't matter. And that could be, that could be the philosophy for them going in. They lost P. Ryan to the Broncos, but there's still room for them to bring in Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette. That's what was so surprising about the NFL draft is I didn't think there were any game-changing trades or acquisitions or anything, not like there was last offseason. Last offseason was an absolute whirlwind of good players changing teams and probably expected to have immediate impacts. And we're just at a lack for that right now. So maybe there's some room for that still.
Yeah, it was a lot of, we noted for the IDP side of things, a lot of linebackers moved, this year.
Sure. Yeah.
Not necessarily big names, because, Devin White's still where he is. Shaq Leonard's still where he is. Roquan moved in December, but we did have a lot of these, like, kind of touted linebackers, TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, guys like that kind of bouncing around here, there, everywhere. There's a few other guys I'm not mentioning, but you kind of know what I mean there.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's like you said, it's been kind of interesting to watch these teams sort of adapt or not adapt,
Sure. And you also, like, I don't want to dive too deep into it, but Joe Mixon's name has popped up this offseason for reasons he would not like them to pop up. So that's also kind of an unspoken part of this is, and that's actually, I don't want to say it's an underrated factor, but it could play into, fantasy purposes. It could extremely play the upcoming season.
Yeah. Definitely. His overall value. I mean, it's just one more knock, you know what I mean? As you get older and more then, just the workload piles up, but that's just not something you want,
No,
so
of course. Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm looking here at some other notable news. Honestly, there's just a lot of like unrestricted free agency signings. I just want to like remind people, most of these deep sleepers, most of these unrestricted guys, even guys in like around 3, 4, 5, I don't count on those players for meaningful fantasy production ever, but definitely not year one. And even the guys you're drafting in your first 1, 2, 3 rounds, guys that were drafted in the NFL draft, 1, 2, 3 rounds. I think it's not wise to rely on those players for your fantasy teams. You want that, that's the hope that you get a day one, maybe week 3 starter like a Justin Jefferson. Something happens like that. It can happen. But a lot more times than that happening, a lot more times than you being the guy who drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown late in the second, you're the guy that drafted Terrace Marshall late in the second. Okay. Don't ask me how I know that.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, I don't know. Just a hypothetical situation I pulled out of the sky. Never heard of that in my life, but it could happen to you, So I'm just saying, at this point in the season, you really want to focus on, the players that have shown something already, which again circles back to what Jahmyr Gibbs. There's this guy on Twitter, smart guy, big fantasy guy. I think his name's Scott Barrett. And he tweeted last night that Jahmyr Gibbs is his number 3 running back behind only Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insanity to me. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense at all. Let's just be real. The archetype of player that Jahmyr Gibbs is what DeAndre Swift just was, and it's interesting to see people completely dump on DeAndre Swift for having all of the exact same things going for him that Jahmyr Gibbs had going for him. There are other players that are into this mold of a player. Travis Etienne, for instance, Miles Sanders, for instance. I just mentioned him. Who did I literally just say? Anyway, those are 2 players right there off the top of my head. J.K. Dobbins might fall into that, where it's the pass catching seems to be pushing them up these rankings. DeAndre Swift. There was a time, friend. All of those names, a year and a half ago at most, that most of those names were top 5, top 8, top 10 dynasty running backs. And if you didn't have them there, something was wrong with you. But they'd never actually been there before.
Sure. Well, it's what you want, right? Yeah.
That archetype is now just being applied straight to Jahmyr Gibbs, Javonte Williams, big vibes guy, broke tackles, did all the right stuff. Look at all the numbers, when we diagram his entire life and we focus in on this one metric, he's literally the greatest thing that's ever happened. And that's great.
Him up. Yeah.
But running back 3 in Dynasty, it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me either, for a multitude of reasons. You just covered a lot of them. But also, it's not exactly as if the Lions have been this running back factory. If you were going to pencil in, like, look what the Lions are able to do every year with, insert blank, like a Philadelphia or like a San Francisco, or even like an LA Rams to a lesser extent, but they really just haven't been that. I feel very mixed about the pick overall. I'm sure he's going to have a fine career, and I'm sure he'll do some great things in fantasy.
Great. I love him. He'll never, ever, ever
lay it down.
Be a top 3 dynasty running back in reality. Now, I say that the market value may be there for a moment. And if that moment's coming, cash in if you got him, friend.
Yeah.
And get it while the getting is good. Okay. Because it ain't going to get that good again. Once people get him on the field and they're like, oh, 12 touches a game and no goal line work. Oh, but the yards per route run. Oh, this isn't a yards per route run premium league for running back.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Screwed. Screwed. I got some
angry.
I got some angry tweets to send out once that starts happening.
You know what I mean? It's also crazy that efficiency is held against every player except for the vibes guy that everyone likes. He's so efficient, so we're gonna push him way up here. He can't be the outlier. He'll never regress to the mean. Not this guy. He's my guy.
Well, that's the thing.
I saw him first.
Yeah, you can always find if you torture the numbers enough, they'll tell you whatever you want them to tell you. And
it's not good faith. It's not presented in good faith, and it's not earnest. It's not an earnest analysis and earnest assessment. It's not. I don't know how you. And if it is, walk me through it step by step, please. Don't just say something like that, because I'm interested, but I want to see how a guy who is projected for maybe 180 touches, that's a high end, is in the same tier, let alone right behind guys who are projected like 340 touches. On their high side, on their median side.
Yeah, you're not going to find an answer from me. It's people who were high on Gibbs coming out of the draft, and then the Lions way overreached for him. I'm telling you, he was not even projected to be a day one pick until 2 days before the draft. And then the Lions, they trade back smartly, and then they take him. I would have preferred.
And they have David Montgomery, who has been more than capable the last 3 years. Doesn't get hurt, runs right between the tackles like he's supposed to. Hands are okay.
He is elite.
He's not God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But he's not. He doesn't fumble. I mean, he knows where to be when he's supposed to be there. He's not fat. He's not Leonard Fournette, or Eddie Lacy.
Yeah, I think that that's another team that understands that you have to have two hands to fight the running back battle. And I don't think that they're ever going to give a single player. They're not going to give a single player the reins, I don't think. And that's what prevents him from being in that top upper group.
Yes. And it's like, it's almost like when you look at it, you zoom out, it's like they brought in a guy like David Montgomery to protect Jahmyr Gibbs. That guy's a weapon. You don't give a weapon 25 touches a game. This isn't Ezekiel Elliott, okay?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't the 2016 Cowboys or whatever. Like, anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Tough stuff.
I just felt like that needed to be said. And again, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think if you have an honest conversation and if you do the projections, if you do the math, pushing him into running back 3 is just impossible. I just don't understand how that works.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know if it's propaganda or if you're just.
It has to be. Well, it's. But again, there it is. It's like, are we presenting earnest fantasy football insights and analysis in good faith, or are we clickbait impression farming so that we can sell ad money against it? To our boss.
I would love to see gun to your head. Would you, I would love to come to the analysts who have him ranked that high and have a little gun to your head. Is this actually your ranking, or are you just on the are you basking?
It's a gun to your head. Like, can I make a phone call? Or like, who are you gonna call? They're like PFF's front office.
Cincinnati.
I don't know the answer to that one.
Let's get Jack Collinsworth on the phone.
Is this guy good or not? Tell me, is this player good? I don't know. I don't have PFF up on my computer.
They took him at 12. He's got to be. That's where they took him. That's where they took Dalvin Cook.
Well, they made up for their plus EV now from all their good picks later.
Yeah, and before we close on this, I'd like to really hammer home. You can be down on a player's ranking and doesn't mean you're down on the player. And like you said yourself several times throughout that conversation, you're still high on him. You like what he can be there. But you have to take in the context of the entire situation, the team philosophy, what they're good at, how they use players. It all matters.
Yep. If you have him on your dynasty team as your running back 1, do not anticipate winning a championship at any point in the near future.
Slaying cakes right now.
If he's your earnest number 1 running back, you are in big fucking trouble, homie.
Tough stuff.
All right. What do we want to talk about next? Like I said, we're just kind of free flowing here, Grateful Dead. So what's up with Zeke? My buddy. Go ahead.
I got one real quick, and I have to give a shout out because this is more of a team thing. I want to throw some love to the Raiders. Just really quickly, the Raiders broke what is almost a 10-year streak of not making a horrific early round draft pick and or fumbling the bag. I was dumping on them all offseason. Mainly, they're an easy target and they're easy cannon fodder, and their fans are easy to rile up. But I mean, there's just a team that's had so many opportunities over the years and have just stepped on rakes continually. But they took a great player that fills a huge need at number 7 with Tyree Wilson, a guy who could have gone, he was projected maybe as high as 2 or 3 that day. And it was very un-Raiders-like for them to just kind of knuckle down and not make a headline-grabbing pick. So I just wanted to give some shout out there. They also made a very smart decision. They were attempting to trade into the late first round to take Michael Maher. The Chiefs wanted a 3rd-round pick. They said, you know what, too rich for our blood. They didn't make the dumb Raiders pick, and he ends up falling to them at 35 anyways. So I just want to give some shout out to them. If they could fire McDaniels and bring in a real coach, this is the team to be set up to succeed.
Yeah, that's no joke. It's funny, the whole Bill Belichick coaches going out thing. It's just weird. It's just weird at this point.
It's tactical. Odd. There's something to it. There's more than just coincidence, man. I've always been a big Bill does everything guy, and it's being proven more by the day.
He runs the whole league.
He does it all, man.
He's literally like, if somebody ran up to Roger Goodell at the draft podium and pulled his face off, Bill Belichick.
Scooby-Doo style, it's Belichick.
Yeah, literally Scooby-Doo style. And I got away with it too.
He's planting cameras at the Orchid Day Spa in Florida for Robert Kraft to get busted. I mean,
yeah, that ain't a lie there. Yeah, see, for real. Now you're talking my language. I'm with that.
I like that deep state stuff.
All that deep state stuff. All right. Well, let's see here. What else do we want to talk about? What other big?
So do you have any? We're talking about guys. You mentioned Joe Mixon earlier as a guy who was saved basically by the draft and or the lack of moves that the Bengals have made. Is there anybody? I'll run through a few guys that I think fit that mold as well as guys whose seasons were potentially saved, careers, who knows. So you let me know. I'm going to run through a couple and let me know if any pop out you want to talk about.
Yep.
So Isaiah Pacheco, Antonio Gibson,
100%.
J.K.
I'm already, just to stop on Pacheco, I'm already a huge Pacheco guy. His ADP, his keep trade cut value is like Dynasty running back 25. Last time I checked, makes no sense at all. I've made like probably 3 or 4 videos over the last 2 months telling people, go get Isaiah Pacheco, go get Pacheco on your team. His ADP, his RB ranking of 20 or 25. And this was, and I would juxtapose it every time against J.K. Dobbins, who was like running back 10. And I was like, which of these players is actually any good and has actually ever done anything? So I'm big. Pacheco's free money right now, like free money.
It was annoying to see how many people were like the day after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, how many people were literally had a drafted tweet that was like, don't expect the Chiefs to stay with Isaiah Pacheco. Like, he's a 7th-round pick, yada, yada, yada. Like, you have a speed score.
Invest enough money in him, and I know a lot about draft capital and money now because I have the internet. Yeah,
they want that, like, counter take. And guys who have his kind of speed score don't go away. He may not have a full 10-year career with the Chiefs, but, like, look at Raheem Mostert. I mean, guys that are that fast and can fit into these, like, powerful outside run schemes, they just – always have a role in the league. They always will be available in some way or another.
Yep. And one of the reasons and the things, the great thing about being an IDP fantasy football person, someone that plays all types of fantasy is one of the things I keyed into was Isaiah Pacheco had 700 kick return yards this year, y'all. Okay.
Damn, I didn't even know that. That's a gem.
You don't think that's 7 football fields of return yards for a guy that you didn't get any of those fantasy points, so you all don't even think they exist. They don't matter, okay?
But they're out there.
You'll sit there and listen to Evan Silva be like, oh, yeah, guy, kick returner, he's really good, and he'll fly up your draft board. Do your research, folks. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco been him, okay? There's a reason they let Mecole Hardman walk out the door, too. They're like, I mean, this guy can catch the kicks. He's already wearing number 10, like my man Tyreek. He caught all but 2 passes they threw to him. And the workload continued. He basically forced Jerick McKinnon, who was a god from week 8 to like 13,
yes, he was,
off the fucking field after that and said, this is my job now. Melvin Gordon never touched the NFL field when he signed with the Chiefs. Ronald Jones never touched the fucking field. CEH never fucking touched the field again. And again, he snatched that chain right off Jerick McKinnon's neck. Okay. those are not 4 running backs you have never heard of. Okay.
That's the truth.
I mean, it's just what I'm saying again, like you said, everybody's like, oh, he's a 7th round pick and then the money's not that. I don't give a damn. Like I mean, like Tyreek Hill was a 7th round or 4th round pick too. And y'all just use your, it doesn't even take an imagination.
Yeah. I think
look at the facts right in front of you and have an honest, earnest conversation.
There's a lot of people that have been, and I think this happens a lot, and I think it's happening with, you can find it almost anywhere. People have been burned by the Chiefs running back spot going back just after Kareem Hunt, right? So Damian Williams, CEH, Darwin Thompson, Darrell Williams, like guys that have never quite stuck, but were relevant. And people go, hey, I want the Chiefs running back. They're going to be in the end zone, the red zone, goal line, all that stuff. And so they're going to continue to write off these guys that don't profile as like top 3 running backs, when in reality, the Chiefs actually have a pretty excellent eye for scouting talent, and they give guys the opportunities when they've proven they can handle it, like Jerick McKinnon and like Pacheco. I mean, it's not complicated.
Yeah, like you said, it's not complicated. They have a way of finding these guys, and they'll get them on the field. It's just that simple. And again, you pointed to, this is that other side of that coin that we talk about a lot here too. There's the quantitative variables. That's all the numbers. And there's the qualitative variables. That's everything that can't be put into your spreadsheet. And one of those things is, how these players kind of get assessed and how they, and how priors, like you said, people being burned 5-6 years in a row because they put everything on that next Chiefs running back and it didn't hit. So now they're off. You're seeing it right now with Sky Moore. There were guys literally, there are bodies all over the Sky Moore hill. I mean, they're impaled. I mean, pros are picking at him. Okay, in the 4th, 6th, I don't know, whatever round y'all was taking him in. Those same people, because they were burned by him and because they went so hard, I mean, they've literally super glued their mouth shut on Rashee Rice right now. Why? And you go farther back, look at Mecole Hardman. No one ever even heard of him that draft cycle. Goes in the 1st round. People took him at 106 in rookie drafts. They've been burned, so now they're just moving away. And you're seeing these situations. Nothing's changed. It's just you were wrong that time. Yeah. All the same stuff can apply to this guy. Maybe that guy was just a bust. But to say that guy was a bust would mean that you evaluated him wrong. So let's just blame the situation. Sure. You know what I'm saying? So it's again, it's one of these qualitative variables where if you listen and you watch enough, you're like, why is this argument suddenly not pertinent to this player? Yeah.
Sure. You're right. No, it's there. You just can't look at 2 players who look the same and have played the same position and drafted by the same team, similar in age, similar athletic profiles, and think that they played the game the same way. The Chiefs haven't had a fast, violent runner like Pacheco since probably Kareem Hunt. And you can make an argument that he's even a better runner than Kareem Hunt. Yeah. Maybe not an overall.
Jamal Charles, That was it.
That was it. That's who he profiles more like.
Dry.
Yeah. And the Chiefs value the run, and they've committed to the run when they have a guy that can handle it. They just haven't had guys that can handle it.
That is my one worry with Pacheco, though, is the way he runs. It reminds me of 2 players I don't like. It reminded me of Thomas Rawls and Christine Michael, because he just, he's running at you like it's almost like he's a linebacker and he's trying to, he wants to hit you. There's a couple of plays, and it's kind of crazy because he didn't even break that many tackles from what I saw, but it's just the force with which he makes his hits. Like, he doesn't slow down, and because of that, maybe he doesn't break the tackles, but it seems like when he gets tackled, he always gets an extra yard or 2, even though he's tackled at a certain spot. So let's say he gets tackled like the 5, because he's hit that guy so hard, he falls down at like the 7 or 8. It doesn't go down as a broken tackle. And I noticed that because I watched a lot of this stuff, but it's still, you're getting yards after contact. He had a shit ton of yards after contact. Almost half of his yards came after contact. That's where you start to notice little things. And again, yards per contact, that kind of went out of style. It doesn't matter anymore. It's yard. What is it? It's broken tackles per carry by the attempter. I don't know. Whatever.
You got it. No, you got it.
Yeah, anyway, we made it through your first running back.
Nice. Hey, that's a big one though, because
that's a big one. And he's going to, and just for a practical standpoint, he's going to rise up so quick in the next week to 2 weeks everywhere. Yeah. So if you are in rookie drafts right now and you think you can make a trade for Isaiah Pacheco for like a second, and you're looking at maybe Cabernet or Charbonnet or whatever, then maybe that's a trade you could make to get somebody that you maybe have a little more faith in and know something about. So that's just inaction.
Yeah, absolutely. As we approach redraft season, also, that'll be a running back I'll be targeting frequently, especially in 0 RB drafts, hero RB drafts. That'll be a massive target of mine. Because, he doesn't have the name brand value that a lot of these other guys have, which makes for scoop ups.
Circle back around again. This is crazy because it's taking me, because these aren't numbers. Nobody tweets these numbers out. But again, people started him week 1 last year. Smart people in fantasy football drafted and started him, and he burned them. And again, there's where this I'm not in on Isaiah Pacheco, because when I was, he let me down. And I can say that because there are tons of players that have done that to me. But I'll say it. I'm like, I have a bias against so and so because he burned me. So take everything I say with a grain of fucking salt about this guy. You know what I mean? But at least it's acknowledged. That's another thing too. I actually acknowledge bias instead of pretend that you can just erase it out of your equation. That's not how.
Yeah, you gotta know that a team like the Chiefs are gonna be streaky. CEH, McKinnon, and Pacheco all had stints as the guy there. So you gotta know that don't play the immediate results. It's a long season. Let it develop.
Bingo.
Yeah. So here's a similar one-ish, and it's only because the offensive coordinator was just on the Chiefs, and now he's on the Commanders. Antonio Gibson, what do you think about him?
I love him. I love him and Brian Robinson. I won a championship with Brian Robinson last year, so I like him. He's a good flex play. Antonio Gibson, another player. They're both, they're probably going to finish the season as, back-end RB2s, mid-range RB2s for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But the thing I like about Gibson is we've seen him with the workload. 2 years ago, I think he had the 3rd most touches behind only Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, and Najee Harris. I think the next guy was Antonio Gibson. He had 340 touches. I think he had the 3rd most receptions too. And caveat that he did that with he had a broken foot. I'm pretty sure he had a broken foot.
Yeah. Okay? He was struggling last year.
And his touchdowns were way lower than every other guy in that grouping too, which is why he kind of fell in the fantasy world. Then they brought on Brian Robinson. He's pretty good. He got his touches this last year. He was good too. But the reality is I've seen Antonio Gibson show me who he is on the football field. Mm-hmm. He's a real man. You know what I mean? He'll catch the ball. He'll run the ball. He's not even a running back. And in his 2nd year in the league, 3rd year in the league, he had the second most carries or some shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Not even putting, real situations of success either on a shit team. So I like Antonio Gibson a lot. I think he represents upside that a lot of people just disengage from. Again, because just the raw touches, we know he can handle them.
Yeah.
There are, you know what I'm saying? And he catches passes. So even if he doesn't get the goal line work, who cares? He can get to the goal line from 20 yards out. I've seen him do it. Yeah.
He finally gets to be used as that, not quite, I don't mean spark plug because I don't mean to diminish his role. But with them having the offense they have now between McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, they're going to roll out Sam Howell, which I'm not going to comment on how I think that's going to go because I don't really know.
Can I disagree? Hard disagree there.
Hard disagree with what?
I think they're going to – I think this is Jacoby Brissett's job. I think he keeps it all season.
So you think that they're going veteran to the house because they need that's a team whose coaching staff is on the line here. They have had no results for a long time.
Think about that though. They brought in Bieniemy, who has been looking for that job. Ron Rivera is fucking gone.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you just keep Brissett in? Brissett's going to be – either way, obviously, it doesn't really matter. They're both going to be awful. But Brissett is not as bad as people think. Yeah. You know what I mean? And maybe even that gives you a reason to pull Howell out of the bag later in the season when Ron Rivera gets fired and it's Bieniemy. Sure. And when everything crashes down, it doesn't go on his shoulders.
So you're talking about the deep state. You're talking big
Eric
picture.
Bieniemy, Washington Commanders. That's weird. That's weird. What's going on over there?
Yeah.
Just wait.
Yeah. So that's a team that I have not trusted previously to have an explosive rushing attack. They've had a battered and piecemealed rushing attack, even if they've had the talent. I don't expect that to be the case this year. And I think Gibson will probably benefit as much as anybody because there was a lot of anti-Gibson slander as soon as Brian Robinson was drafted. And that was hard to watch.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny again. I'm not running Evan Silva through the ringer. I love Evan Silva, but it's just funny that if you know how the fantasy media cycle works, You know that if you listen to Evan Silva's pod on Mondays during the, the off season, you'll hear Evan Silva's takes all week long through the rest of the community. And one of Evan Silva's takes 2 years ago was that Antonio Gibson was going to be amazing, and he shot up to the end of the second round or back into the second round.
He was a high pick,
that's too heavy, but but he was, the art again, nothing changed, but Brian Robinson came in, and I got him like the 10th, 11th round last year. It's like, what's different? Evan Silva doesn't like him. And it's just like, it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. No. But it's just, these are those qualitative variables. You won't find this in the spreadsheets. PFF doesn't keep track of this stuff, guys.
Yeah. He had 195 touches last year in 15 games, underwent foot surgery the second the season was over. I think he's going to come back ready to rock. I mean, this guy still doesn't have a ton of miles on him.
What were his numbers last year?
Last year, he had, let's see here, 149 attempts for 546 rush yards, 46 receptions for 353 receiving yards. He had 8 touchdowns. And that was when, they kind of made an effort to push Brian Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't it wasn't bad. Brian Robinson played fine, but it wasn't quite the passing of the baton that I think people...
No, you're right. He had multiple games, like 23, 30, almost 30 carries out of nowhere. Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck did he do to deserve that?
Yeah, and I think that people profile Robinson when they think of him for whatever reason. They think of him as kind of like the smaller scat back. He's 6'2", 220.
No, he's built like Latavius Murray.
He's a big guy. Yeah. Yeah, so he's got, and this is perfect. This is what we want, right? Low expectation guy with a smart offensive coordinator coming in. It's another guy like Pacheco that's just going to lay in the cut, and people who are paying attention will be able to scoop him up.
I feel like that Brian Robinson 2022 season you just read off to me is going to look a lot like that 2023 Jahmyr Gibbs season.
Hate to see it.
Let's be real, y'all.
Pay attention. Pay attention to who's making the calls, who's in charge. That's what matters.
It pays to pay attention. Pays to pay attention.
I'm into it. So I've got another one here, and this one's, a little bit more. This one's kind of strange because this guy's having a very weird career. James Conner. What are your James Conner vibes for the upcoming year? The Cardinals haven't done anything at all.
It's weird because every year it's different. I like James Conner a lot. 2 years ago, he was on a ton of my best ball teams because everybody, the consensus was Chase Edmonds is God. James Conner was like an 8th or 10th round running back. Had a lot of them, and he was amazing. I think he ended up like running back 8, 9, 10, something like that. But the pendulum completely swung. And last year, it was James Conner is suddenly a year older on this, on the Arizona Cardinals, but now he's like a 2nd round pick, 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so how is the consensus seeing this now? But they couldn't see it then when it was actually valuable. So I faded him last year, and of course he came down a little bit. Obviously he was a zillion touchdowns. Yeah. He was kind of like the Jamal Williams before he was Jamal Williams.
He had a stretch that saved the perception of his season.
Exactly. But he's still what he is. If I can get him in the 6th or 7th round, he's a guy he's a running back, low end running back 2 for me, who has weekly running back 1 upside just based on his touchdowns and touches alone. Talent wise, age wise, team wise, all those things are negative. There are a lot more talented running backs in the league. That's not to say he's not talented.
Sure.
Okay. There's a lot younger running backs in the league. That's not to say that he's old. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of, better teams in the NFL. And that is to say that the Arizona Cardinals are trash. Yeah. So the reality is touchdown equity is going to be low. Just overall team value equity is going to be low. James Conner, older, let's say we rely on him. He's broken down in the past. You know what I mean? So like James Conner, yes. I don't know. Do I have any James Conner? No. During the off season here, depending on the perception and how the narrative comes or goes around him, and we'll have to see. I don't think the running back market is completely settled yet necessarily. But I would give him. I think a bullish projection for him would be like a high end running back too.
Yeah, and I think that they've made it clear that they're cool with that, with the moves that they haven't made. They're going into full rebuild mode. In full rebuild modes, they typically like to rely heavily on their veteran players early and kind of see what they have from everybody. And he's always, like you said, he's people just completely misconstrued what he was. They looked at that 2020 Pittsburgh offense, and a lot of people from the outside looking in said, oh, the problem with this rushing attack is James Conner, when it really wasn't. Could he do what Najee Harris can do? Not especially from the passing game, but it was really a horrible offensive line and a tough passing situation. Transfer him over to the Cardinals, where it's the opposite of that, and the guy thrives like crazy. But he's one of those guys that he's going to go as the offensive line and the team goes. And he can capitalize very quickly. So do you expect the Cardinals to, be in that same attack this year? Probably not, but he's still going to get the volume.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing. He's the only guy there that's really set up to get anything. But yeah, again, we saw Latavius Murray sign this morning, kind of disrupting things. So, in a certain spot, I wouldn't be surprised if we get Leonard Fournette popping up here.
Sure.
Somebody will show up here. And again, even if they do, I don't necessarily think that's even going to hurt James Conner. You know what I mean? Per se. But I just don't think this situation is totally settled. I want to look at James Conner real quick on Keep Trade Cut.
It's a really funky team, because as of this moment right now, they're actually like a semi-decent backup away from being a sort of fun offense. They've still got Ertz is coming back from his recovery, which is tough, but they've still got Hopkins, they've got Brown, Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch, Trey McBride, and then of course James Conner in the backfield. I mean, I would hate for this team to be a wasteland with some of the fun pieces that they have, but rather they might be the way that they're trending.
James Conner, 28, running back, 38.
Oh my God. So he's written off.
Yeah, that feels too low to me.
Yeah.
So I think that he's definitely a candidate to try to add to your team right now. I'm looking here, some of the players that are around him. This is per Keep Trade Cut, which I like to use. It's crowdsourced Dynasty rankings. So they don't ask people, it's generally consensus or a certain ranking system, but they ask people to give their opinion based on their perspective. So you get a really good value idea. But just to give you an idea, Antonio Gibson's 2 spots ahead of him at 36, running back 36. I'd much rather have Antonio Gibson. But both those guys, I think, the value is misplaced or is just not right now. So those would be good players to attack. Brian Robinson, running back 31. I think all 3 of those players are being massively undervalued right now.
So do you think, we were just talking about them, and obviously the player personnel is different, but do you think that if the Cardinals are to run out a backup quarterback that is not fun, a Colt McCoy, a David Blau, something like that, do you like the volume that a potential James Conner might get from maybe 15 to 20 touches a game, or do you think that maybe might be misprojecting the ceiling?
I think that's accurate. I mean, but it's going to depend on the draw. I mean, but again, it's the Cardinals suck. So, I mean, like if they go down early, and we get in a situation, we have a crappy quarterback turning it over and we're dropping back to pass, that's going to hurt, his upside. So they're going to need to play ball control, so they're going to need to have a good game manager. I don't know if they have that. They're going to need to get a good defense. I know they don't have that. So again, it's James Conner. That's why I said, he'll have weekly upside where, he could throw it in for a couple of touchdowns. But I think overall week to week, he's going to be very boom or bust, just because I don't think his volume is intrinsic to him playing the game. Because I don't know that the games that the Cardinals are going to play are going to be intrinsic to using a running back in the way that James Conner will be successful.
Yeah, then they're just to tie a bow on that, the Cardinals, obviously a new head coaching hire this year with Gannon from the Eagles, but their offensive coordinator was the Browns quarterback coach last year, Drew Petzing. Before that, he worked as the tight ends coach. And before that, he worked as a wide receivers coach for the Vikings. So not necessarily, I'm not saying it's a downside there, but not necessarily, to transition from the Eric Bieniemy conversation we just had, not quite all of the pieces we want to see.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a transition year. So, I mean, he's an older asset, in Dynasty. He's a player that I wouldn't mind having. He'll probably have some good flex weeks, but you can't build a team around him. He's not somebody, even though the draft kind of went his way, I wouldn't say it spiked his value.
It's hard to bake this in, but he's also probably a good trade candidate midseason in the NFL, actually, for a contender who might lose somebody or who might need a bolster. That's something to keep an eye on.
Yep. Especially if he shows some early, success. and they seem like they're going down. You know, I mean, he could end up on the Rams or something. You just never know. So,
yeah, and that's it for my who got lucky.
Nice. Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of the conversation around Chicago. Well, you know, let's just talk. This is the running back show. So we had Roschon get drafted there. Day 3, joins Khalil Herbert. Now I know, you know, if you want to talk draft capital, obviously Roschon Johnson has better draft capital, but like Khalil Herbert was very, very good at football. If people watched last year, you know, he good enough to where they moved on from David Montgomery, and then they got somebody to obviously, you know, back him up. Now, maybe Roschon ends up taking that job. Maybe he is the better running back. But we have NFL production from Khalil Herbert, high level. Not just he played some games. You know, he didn't just go out there and, you know, no shade. Latavius, you know, James Cook it. You know what I'm saying? He didn't just get on the field. You know, he went out there and he had some massive gains on some not very big runs. I think he had one of the highest yards per carry. You know, you can tell me that doesn't matter, but
it's true, and that's important. I actually will say his yards per carry is important because it's a factor, because they have a rushing dual threat quarterback who can vulture the hell out of stuff. So you need a home run guy who can take it from any distance, because that's how you kind of need the points to be coming from there, because you're not going to be able to quite as count on the touchdowns. You know, he only had 4 touchdowns last year. 5 if you count one receiving touchdown, but I mean, he's not going to get those goal line. It's either going to be Foreman or it's going to be, you know, Fields snagging both of them. But I mean, he's very Tony Pollard-esque in my opinion.
Yeah, and I just think that people are kind of, I mean, they, you know, the Roschon Johnson guys, which was, you know, the Jahmyr Gibbs guys, which is everybody, just basically, I mean, they buried him. I mean, his funeral was on Saturday, if you guys missed it, or Friday. Here lies Khalil Herbert. But I think that there's a misvaluation going on there, just because it's so easy to just, you know, again, a lot of guys, I don't understand either. It's kind of weird just how people don't understand that they're just doing this. It's like, oh, Roschon Johnson's going to take that job. Based on what? Your opinion? Like, literally, we don't mean like, this is assuming that he's not an absolute bust, too. I mean, like, we know every year in the draft, half the guys, more than half of them are literally just disappear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's funny that every player that gets drafted is a huge, you know, he could potentially take the job of somebody who's proven that they can do it, obviously.
Yeah. I typically don't take a team drafting a running back as an indicator of what they think of the player they have on the roster. I look at it as, this is the most frequently injured skill position group across the board, and it's always good to have depth at the position, especially when a day 3 pick. I mean, is there upside because he's a nice prospect? Yes. Is there any guarantee that he's even on the roster by the time the season rolls around? No. So let's not put the cart in front of the horse.
Exactly. Don't put the cart before the horse. You know, don't overpay for Roschon. Don't get rid of, you know, don't trash Khalil Herbert. Don't trash DeAndre Swift. Don't trash Antonio Gibson just because their market value is not reflecting accurately what their fantasy value is right now, because we're just going through a transition moment. You know, we go through a couple every offseason. The first big one is kind of right after the season ends, where you kind of get ADPs kind of shuffling. Your next one is kind of during the draft process, and then you get another big one right after the draft. And then, you know, it's after this, it's just kind of now it becomes basically narrative and injury driven, because all the numbers, all the data, the players are set. So it's important to identify some of these things now, so you can watch them shift and change, so that maybe you can be, you know, because, you know, if you come back in 6 weeks and a player's way up, but you didn't know that he was way down, you can't take advantage of that in your league based on the market value perception. So that's why, you know, again, a running back 3 for a guy, you know, who's a starter on a team, that just doesn't make sense. The word for that is cognitive dissonance. You know, like, it's a psychological term. It's when things don't make sense. You know, it's kind of like gaslighting. It's just like, just, you can take advantage of this happening out here. So
I completely agree. Herbert is, if you look at his little career trajectory, as short as it's been, it's looking like the Bears are ready to give him the reins, so to speak. He's only had 30 more touches last year, but he almost doubled his yards. The team moved on from its highly drafted previous running back to a different team. They didn't bring in any serious competition for what Herbert's role is, and they spent a late round pick on a guy that may or may not make the roster. I mean, things are trending significantly up. Guys usually make the leap when put in this situation.
Yeah. And again, it's not a knock on Roschon Johnson. Let's just call him what he is. He's the backup to Khalil Herbert. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he is right now. So operate under those parameters. Don't let anybody talk you into anything else. That would be kind of my final note there. But I've kept you about an hour, Chuck. I appreciated your time. Any final words to the squad before we jet set on out of here?
Oh gosh, any final words to the squad?
Play IDP.
You know what? This will be my first year playing IDP, and part of this show is a big part of that. So I appreciate all the good stuff you guys have been putting out. I'll be looking forward to being a rookie in the fantasy world again, being a novice. It's time to. It's how I stay humble and stay close to the common football man.
It's not as hard as people act. I want to take this moment to say that too. I see that sentiment a lot. Like, oh, I don't want to play IDP. I'm intimidated or I'm worried or it's hard. If you're playing offensive fantasy in your first year, you get a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and a tight end, and you get a kicker and a defense. Okay, realistically, if you add IDP or play IDP, you get a linebacker, a defensive lineman, and a defensive back. It's 3 positions. It's half as complicated if you're honest with yourself. Okay. Now people, again, there's cognitive dissonance. They just say things. They don't really pay attention to what they're saying. Mm-hmm. It's not that it's hard. And me as an example, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the brightest crown in the box. I've only played IDP for, I think this is my 4th year. But my first season playing, I won an IDP experts league. You know what I'm saying? I've won a championship in two last seasons of 2 of 3 of the last seasons and another IDP expert league. Yeah. Like, now I guess maybe you could call me an expert and authority, maybe more like, because I do it. But my years of experience, I have a little more experience than you. But when I started this show, I literally had just started doing my first IDP fantasy league. I had just gotten into it and nobody did it. So I was like, well, I'll just cover it, And it's not hard. Like, that's just my final thing is like, it's in your head. If that's what you're saying, please stop saying. And not saying it's to you, anybody out there. If that's what you're saying out there to yourself or even publicly, stop saying that because it's not true and it scares people. The reality is a putz like me played my first year with a bunch of pros and I won. Okay. And you should have that kind of confidence too, because it's fucking fantasy football. Okay. That's right. So you should follow us. You should play both sides of the ball. And come get some really good fucking information and take that with you and go kick some ass in all your leagues, not just in all.
Spread your wings and fly. There's a lot of points out there to be had. You just got to go find them.
Amen. All right. Well, IDP Army, that's it from us. Be sure to follow along, smash subscribe, follow both podcast feeds. We will be doing more best ball content soon. The IDP rookie rankings will go up on the channel this week. I know that's what people are thirsty for. We're just going to cover the top guys, the ones that you're probably going to want to get in your rookie drafts. If you're looking for any information on that beforehand, come into the Discord. The link is in the description. And that is all for me, y'all. Peace out.